Well, of course, my boozing companion was Francis Bacon. I loved Francis's view of life. He went to a party once. This sums him up, and it sums me up too. And Lord Rothermere said to him in his party with the ballroom, he said, and what do you do? I mean, Francis Bacon was arguably the most famous painter in the whole world, globally speaking. His photograph and everything had been with him, and this arsehole says to him, and what do you do? And Francis said, I'm just an old puff. And and he was no respecter of persons, and I'd been taught to be like that as well. And I mean, after all, it was at Lord Rothermere's and Lady Rothermere's that Francis had booed Princess Margaret, that is royalty, off the stage for her off-key rendering of a Cole Porter song. I mean, everybody was having to sit through this awful warbling, you know, off-key, and then there started this, like, I don't know, boo, 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 you know, like in a hallowed congregation, as it were. And people were looking right, and that was Francis booing her off stage, and she was so upset then that he kept going, boo, hiss, you know, get off, and all of that. And nobody had done that to Princess Mike. He sort of, you know, risked the tower, didn't he, really? And that was at Lord Rothermere's, where Lord Rothermere had been, and yet afterwards he's saying to, and, you know, what do you do? and I mean, he said to, what's his name, the one who was so rude to me, the writer who used
Geoffrey Bernard.
Geoffrey Bernard. He said to Geoffrey Bernard, who was an odious creature really, not a nice man, not at all, though I loved Geoffrey Bernard is unwell, Peter O'Toole playing him, that was brilliant. And it was after I'd done that review for television, London Weekend or whatever it is, you know, in the Coach and Horses with Geoffrey Bernard, and they hadn't wanted to talk to him. Well, they didn't want to, because completely arseholed. He'd been in there since dawn, and he came turning nasty on me and gave me a diatribe of how he'd always hated everything that I stood for, and at one time folk were genteel creatures, but not after I'd come along, and that other slut from Australia, you know, Jermaine Greer, you know, ruined, that's the 60s, ruined life for him. And he was shouting and nearly threatening to hit me, and the word went round. And Francis was incensed. I went round to the colony afterwards, and he said, I'll get my own back on you bastard. And then he said to Geoffrey, in front of everybody, a bit later on, he said, what are you going to do with yourself now, Geoffrey, now that you've lost every ounce of your looks? He said, what is your future? How do you see your future? And Geoffrey said, well, at least, darling, I won't be having a facelift. Well, we didn't know that Francis had had a facelift. You know, he looked youthful, of course, so it was all spiteful like that. When I was in that milieu, I never looked to God for anything. And to tell you the truth, if you think in biblical terms, as I had been warned by my granny and grandfather, you know, there are such things as, you know, in the wilderness. I was in the wilderness. I was going slowly and slowly down, or rapidly downhill with the drink. I had Soho-itis amongst that lot. And yet Francis had been up since 4 or 7 in the morning painting before he came out. I wasn't doing that, I was still out.
And you weren't painting?
And I wasn't painting and I wasn't writing. That's what brought me into the recovery rooms, you know, to start. But you talk about my painting, who my muse had been. I did love, I still always loved Turner. Especially that, you know, steam something and something when it's going through and it's all, you know, cloudy and everything. I've always loved the paintings of John Hoyland. I love the poetry in that man and his individual path. I love the company of Terry Frost. He and I were very close, Terry and I. I loved his attack, and he loved my attack of life. There was a lot of kindred spiritship there.